Good afternoon. Welcome to the Concord, Massachusetts Local Candidate Forum of 2021. My name is Cindy Knock, and I'm the Voter Service Director for the League of Women Voters of Concord Carlisle. Our forum is being held virtually, of course, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. This year, the town caucus in Concord resulted in all open seats having at least one candidate nominated. After the caucus, a fourth candidate for a seat on the select board was nominated by petition. The result is there are 10 candidates running for office with one contested race. This league moderated forum is for that contested race of 4 candidates for 2 seats on the select board. The other 6 candidates running for the uncontested races are Carmen Reed for re-election to a 1-year position as town moderator, Cortland Booth for re-election to a 3-year position on the school committee, Tracy Morano for election to a 3-year position on the school committee, Stefan Bader for election to a 5-year position on the Housing Authority, Charles Phillips for a 2-year position on the Housing Authority, and Stephanie Schroback for a 1-year position on the Housing Authority. To learn about these candidates, please visit our new webpage for local candidate information on our website, lwvcc.org. Scroll down the homepage to find it. This forum is being recorded and will be posted on the lwvcc.org website for later viewing. Assisting us is Peggy Wargelin as Zoom operator, Linda Ziffrin as waiting room attendant, Court Booth and Cynthia Rainey as chat question screeners, and Nancy and Bob Brown as a timekeeper. The audience will be muted at all times. It helps if you can turn your camera off too, so that the gallery is not showing a lot of faces. You'll probably find it best to be on speaker view to view this forum. Please keep your questions in the chat brief and clear. The chat screeners will be observing the chat and will likely see similar or related questions, which they will distill down to a single question for the candidates. We will attempt to get to as many questions as we can. Now, I am pleased to welcome Lynn Brodsky, who will moderate today's forum for the contested race for 2 positions on the select board. Lynn is the Voter Service Director of the League of Women Voters of Winchester and is a league-trained moderator. Thank you, Lynn, for joining us today.
Yes, thank you for inviting me to serve as your moderator, and thank you to all of you for taking the time to attend this forum today. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan, multi-issue organization that encourages informed, active participation of citizens in government. The League does not support or oppose candidates or political parties. Our purpose here today is to educate voters about the candidates on the March 25th ballot and their perspectives on the issue. There are 4 candidates running for 2 positions on the Concord Select Board, and they are Linda Escobedo, the incumbent, Dean Banfield, Henry Dane, and Carlyn Reed. Thank you, candidates, for running for this important position in Concord. The order of the forum will be as follows: opening statements, warm-up questions, league-generated questions, chat-generated questions, and finally, closing statements. The order of the candidates speaking has been determined randomly. You have 2 minutes to make an opening statement. So the order is going to be first Linda Escobedo, then Carlyn Reed, then Dean Banfield, and then Henry Dane. And so you're on, and the timekeeper will start timing.
Okay, thank you to the League for hosting this forum today. My name is Linda Escobedo, and I'm running for re-election for the Select Board. I'm currently chair of the Select Board and finishing my first 3-year term. It's been a privilege to live in Concord for over 40 years, where my appreciation grows every day for the character of our town. I've had the good fortune to live in 2 different locations, both in West Concord as well as up on Revolutionary Ridge, and it's given me appreciation for the distinction and uniqueness of our neighborhoods, as well as the treasures and resources nearby to each of those neighborhoods. I care deeply about the social fabric of Concord. I have served on the Hugh Cargill Trust, on the Open Table Board, where I established a secure foundation for their fundraising efforts, and also on the Concord Carlisle Community Chest, where I remain a overseer. I bring my former senior academic administration skills to leadership roles that I've played with the Concord Housing Authority during the construction of the Peter Buckley Modernization Building Project, as well as work that I did with the CPC and now on the Select Board. I've been a liaison to probably more than 12 different committees in town, where I have gained a real appreciation for the town governance process and both the perspectives and the technical expertise that all of our volunteers bring. I particularly enjoy the town's excellent schools, our historic and cultural resources, as well as our business amenities. And that, along with our wonderful agricultural resources and our trails and conservation land, give me plenty of opportunity to enjoy events and activities. I look forward to answering your questions today.
Thank you, Linda. Carlyn?
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. This is going to be fun. I hope you all enjoy it as much as I do. My name's Carlyn Reed. I'm running for Select Board, and this is my first time running for political office. The reason why I'm running, well, I want to give back to my community. I enjoy watching the town committees. Currently, I'm watching 10 different areas: health and safety, schools, seniors, infrastructure, broadband, housing, environment, budgets, and business. I have a website. If you have a chance, go take a look at it. It's www.carlynforconcord.com. And I have 2 more coffees left. If you want to join me, please do so. They're scheduled for Friday, March 12 at 7 p.m. and Tuesday, March 16 at 4 p.m. Send me an email at carlynforconcord@gmail.com and we'll get you set up. Come join me. We'll talk the issues. Thanks.
Thank you. You finished before your time. Next is Dean.
Thank you. And thanks to the League. Thank you to the League for hosting this event. It's one of the few opportunities I have to engage with the public. I don't have any coffees at the moment, but I'm hoping to set some up. So thank you for hosting this event. I'm a 25-year resident of the town. My kids have gone through the high school all the way from kindergarten all the way up on through. So we have a great understanding of the quality of the education, the fabric of the town. And, you know, sometime around when my youngest kids were just getting out of the point at which they really needed a lot of help in getting through middle school, I started to contribute to the community by engaging in town committee work. I've been following my passion, which is natural conservation. So I started on the NRC, and then I moved on as a liaison member from the NRC to 3 years with the Community Preservation Committee. I contributed to a long-range plan for open space and recreation, and then jumped to the Finance Committee. One of the reasons that I'm running is because as a Finance Committee member, I have found the Finance Committee work very rewarding, but the Finance Committee itself has a very limited capacity to move the needle. And as a result, I feel as though a place on the Select Board is a place where there is actual authority to move stuff forward. The Finance Committee recommends action to town meeting, but it has no actual authority of its own. And so after 5 years and chairing last year during the pandemic, I felt it was a good time to jump forward and put my name in the mix and go forward and try to be one of your Select Board members. So thank you. That's my statement. I'm sticking with it. Thanks.
Thank you, Dean. And Henry, your opening statement.
Okay, thank you, everyone who's participating in this. And I also, by the way, want to congratulate the League on, this is still the 100th anniversary year of the 19th Amendment. I think events like this are really very helpful and useful. And I hope that in the future, after the election, that I might be able to talk the League into having the Select Board members appear in events like this in the future. I would like to encourage a culture which emphasizes openness, transparency, sustainability, and responsiveness on the board. I've lived in Concord longer than any of the other people, but that just makes me older. I've had 4 children who went through the Concord schools, both private and public. I've served on many town boards and committees or appeared before them, and many civic organizations. I was president of the Rotary Club twice. I set up the corporation that built the Beatty Center, and the Concord 350th Anniversary Committee, and going on down the line, working with the Housing Authority, participated in the building and most of the projects that they completed in this town over the last 20 or 30 years. The people who support me, I think, have a wide diversity of views, and I think that will improve the communication between them and me. Everyone needs to be heard. Hard budget decisions are to be made. We need to support excellent education, local business, and I have the ability to, and the commitment to, and the energy to serve on the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Henry. So next, we're going to try some warm-up questions, and the answers will be yes, no, or I don't know. And it's perfectly fine to say I don't know. And if you need to make a 5-second qualifier, an example would be yes, but only in the summertime. And I don't know what that question is, but that would be about how much time you should take. So just aim for yes, no, or I don't know. So the orders are going to be Dean, Linda, Henry, and Carlyn. So question 1, should the town extend the sewer system?
Yes.
Linda?
Yes.
Henry?
Yes.
And Carlyn?
It depends.
Okay.
That's qualified, sorry.
Okay. That's where it's going to stop. To really try to have yes, no, I don't know. And if it depends, just give like 3 words of what it depends on if possible. Next question. Do you think Concord needs a local transportation system? And the order is Carlyn, Henry, Linda, and Dean. And you don't need to wait for me to recognize you. Just jump right in.
Yes, if we can afford it.
Yes, I think it's important.
Absolutely. We have a growing senior population.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, do you support community policing in Concord? And the answer is Henry, Dean, Carlyn, and Linda.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Sure. Yes.
The next question
Yes.
is, do you
I didn't have,
think what?
okay.
You have to wait till Linda answers before you move on to the next question.
I'm sorry. So why don't you start over, Linda? You get a mulligan. I apologize.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Do you have a qualifier? Or just absolutely?
They do a great job already.
Okay, thank you. Do you think the town needs more parking, for example, in the town centers, at outdoor open spaces, at parks, or at the schools? The order is Linda, Carlyn, Dean, and Henry.
Yes.
Most of the places, yes.
Yes.
Probably depending on what we do about local transportation.
Okay, and the last of the warm-up question is, currently commercial and residential property are taxed at the same rate. Given the significant depreciation, trust laws, and tax write-offs offered to commercial properties, would you support a different, that is a higher rate for commercial property? And the order is Dean, Linda, Henry, and Carlyn.
No, not at this time.
No, not at this time.
If the answer to this would be higher, actually, it's a complicated question, but I think actually the right answer might be lower.
Okay, so that would be a no. And Carlyn?
No.
Okay. So next we're going to do the league generated questions, and you will have up to 2 minutes to respond to each question. And we're going to again continue this kind of random order, which is predetermined. And if requested, and if I think it makes sense, and we'll watch the time, a brief 30-second rebuttal time may be allowed after all candidates have responded. So the first question is, what steps could town government take to better understand, communicate with, and be more responsive to the entire community? So the order is Carlyn, Henry, Linda, and Dean. So Carlyn, you're on.
I think the best thing we can do right now is to give more time at each public meeting for public comments. All the committees, all of them, routinely give just a very short time, maybe 3 minutes, 5 minutes, or none. And I think to get some more community involvement in this, we should let the community speak at the committee meetings, not just the select board, but every single one. So that's the suggestion that I can think of off the top of my head of how to improve community involvement and to get a better communication system. Thank you.
Henry?
My watchword is open, transparent, and responsive. I think we need to make information easier to get on the town website. It should be organized in a useful way rather than on a word search basis to cover current issues. I think that meetings need to provide citizen input. It seems to me kind of useless at the select board meetings to have citizen comment at the end after all the votes have been taken. The correspondence that gets sent to the select board in particular should be included among the meeting material so that people can see what has been sent to the board in advance. We need to have office hours as they used to have, and I have committed myself, if elected, not only to hold office hours myself virtually for as long as necessary to do it that way, but also to have other members of the select board hold office hours where people can talk to them and express their views. I think that the league, as I mentioned earlier, should probably hold online sessions like this on a regular basis and ask the members of the select board to be available to comment on questions that are before them and are before the town. I think we should open the town offices as soon as feasible, and that we should resume in-person meetings as soon as we can, because there are a lot of values that are to be gained from personal contact with people.
Thank you. Linda?
Yes, I agree that there probably needs to be a reordering of the presentation of material on our website. I would like to see the town manager's weekly reports more broadly distributed and available to people to access. I think we need additional public forums on issues of high interest. And I say that with full well understanding the capacity limitations of employees and others who are already stressed in many cases. I think we need more integration of our and communication about our long-term planning needs as it interacts with our annual goals for the select board, as well as the status of our budget limitations. I think I'll stop there. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dean?
My primary concern is the utility of the Concord Mass website. It's already been voiced by others, but I feel as though it really needs to be overhauled in a way that makes the material that people are looking for findable. So that's important. We do have a captive department now, which is the Minuteman Media Network, and each meeting has been recorded. But if you go to the area where the meeting history is in the calendar, you can get the agenda, you can get the minutes, but you cannot get an immediate link to get out to the media that was recorded. So that would be helpful for that to be more integrated. And because it's a town department, we should be able to pull that together so people can find that sort of thing. Open meeting law requires all materials which are presented at any meeting to become available for retrieval. They are typically not, especially materials that committee members are distributed in advance to review before the meeting. And that's been mentioned by others, but that's an important capability that also needs to be added. So that's a big focus, is trying to sort of straighten out that piece of how we interact and become transparent with the community. I think that the select board could have an opportunity here to ask the state to expand open meeting law to include some sort of video. We've had a year of using Zoom now. When we go back and the governor takes us off of our emergency declaration, we will have to go back to full in-person meetings, and people who are attending remotely will have to not be allowed to vote, or however that works. You're only allowed to have one member. The law is extremely restrictive. So I think that the state ought to really look at whether we can expand that, and the select board could push something to our representative to try and encourage the state to change the law. Thanks.
Thank you. So I hear a lot of agreement that the website needs to be improved and that there's increased opportunities for transparency. So I think we'll go on to the next question. What strategies do you envision to reduce the tax burden, increase housing diversity, and provide transportation options for our long-term residents? And the order is Henry, Dean, Carlyn, and Linda. So Henry?
Thank you. Well, I think the first step in any kind of financial planning is careful budgeting, both for the operating budget and for the capital budget. I think the Finance Committee plays an essential role in that process. I think that there should be closer coordination between the Select Board and the Finance Committee. And I think it's really very important that the recommendations of the Finance Committee be taken seriously and followed whenever they're consistent with the town policies. So I think that it's important to have committee chair meetings with the committee chair's breakfast to coordinate priorities. And I think that with the large expenditures that we are facing and the impact that those expenditures will have on the owners of modest homes, and to ask those people to bear those expenses when much of that money is going to be devoted to things like affordable housing, I think the only answer to that really is to seriously consider the residential exemption. I know there are problems with it, but it is the only way I think that we can afford to carry these heavy financial burdens and not start to exclude people from town because of the tax burden that has to be borne by people with homes that are in the $500,000, $600,000 range, which sounds expensive, but that's the cheapest home you can get in this town. And we need to use available land as an incentive for the construction of affordable housing, and our affordable housing should be based on families, not on fulfilling the 40B requirements.
Thank you, Henry. Dean?
The question is stated as trying to reduce the tax burden. I don't find that to be something that we really have the capacity to do. We have been working at the Finance Committee on trying our very limited tools that are available to the community right now. I think Henry pointed to the one that I have identified here, and that is to raise an exemption level. A certain number of dollars worth of value of your home's property will not be subject to tax, and everything above that. Now, what that will do is it will push the tax burden to those people who have, the largest homes in the community and have the most value above the threshold of the exemption. But that's about the only tool in the toolbox other than trying to reduce the growth of taxes. And the Finance Committee has been working on that extensively during my time there. And in the last 2 years, we've rolled out something called the sustainable growth rate for taxation. And we study exogenous factors like inflation rates, employment rates, rise in income locally, to try to tamp down any growth in taxes which exceeds the capacity of taxpayers to pay. So we have, as I said, we have very limited tools available in that regard. The next piece of the question is increasing the housing diversity. And housing diversity, I think, in the town is actually quite robust. this notion that we don't have a diverse housing stock is really quite funny to me. We've built communities at Conant Street, we've built Riverwalk, we've built a lot of attached townhome things. This goal of let's get back to, I'm sorry, we're going to just have to kind of cut this off, but we're going to try to get back to the small ranch or cape I don't think that we should be focused on that. Thanks.
Hey, thank you, Dean. And Carlyn?
This is a classic question that the select board will be facing at every single meeting. How to balance our wants and our needs. For example, at the upcoming select board meeting, the select board is going to be looking at requests from the Concord Housing Authority to allocate $500,000 for affordable housing, which I think is a marvelous idea. But at the last select board meeting, there was discussion about, well, how much can we afford to allocate to anything given our fiscal constraints that we have right now? One proposal that was offered at the last select board meeting was $250,000 towards affordable housing. Now, this is an example of kind of balancing of interests and priorities that the select board has to do every single time. And I can see that happening in this particular issue as well. But the primary purpose for me is not affordable housing. It is primarily the health and safety right now to make sure that we are all living in a good, comfortable town. And that's one of the goals that I'm looking for. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda, you're next.
Well, as my fellow candidates have already pointed out, there are many aspects to this particular question. Clearly, we need to live within budgets. Clearly, we need to focus on a balance of the multiple interests that are in town. And we need to leverage opportunities using a variety of strategies. And I can give you a couple of examples of how we're doing that. In the affordable housing area, I don't agree that we have the current mix of housing stock that our citizens have been asking for and requesting for a number of years now. But for efforts that we are making in the area of affordable housing, we try to leverage other funds with existing local matching funds that are on hand and that can be used immediately when opportunities present themselves. We have an example of that coming up. We did a couple of weeks ago at the select board with the Emerson Annex unit. And because we had some affordable housing funds on hand, we could leverage those and get additional money from the state in order to keep that unit on the SHI for the town. But beyond that, let me say that I think our staff in town do an excellent job going after grant opportunities that, again, oftentimes need to be matched by the state. By us, locally, so that we either acquire infrastructure, equipment, and or capacity to address some of the wants and needs that our citizens are bringing to us. They often come with future commitments for the budget, but that is factored into how we think about them. So I could go on, but I'll stop there now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is, what strategies do you envision for attracting a younger and more diverse population to the town? And the order is Linda, Carlyn, Dean, and Henry.
So we have recently looked at the split tax rate. And that was not recommended by the Board of Assessors nor the Select Board. And the reason why was that it was going to negatively affect over 1,000 households in town that would be affected by higher taxes that would be passed on to them. And who inhabits some of those units? Some younger residents, some seniors who are downsizing, and others who are in the lower economic bracket in terms of seeking housing opportunities. So that's one response. One of the reasons that the Zone Planning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals have been looking at alternative ways or ways to strengthen local bylaws in terms of types, and also encouraging, finding ways to incentivize developers and planners so that they would be more likely to address housing needs and the type of housing needs that we need to attract younger individuals, workforce personnel, and others.
Are you all set?
I am, thank you.
Okay. Next, Carlyn.
This question was about diversity, right? Lynn, is that right?
So it was, what strategies do you envision for attracting a younger and more diverse population to our town?
Younger and more diverse. All right. Well, diversity is not just age, it's not just race, it's not just income, it's not just demographic, location, it's all of those. So there are a lot of meanings within the concept of what's a diverse population. If you looked at the census.gov facts for Concord, you'd see as of, I think it's July 2019, that roughly 80% of the population identifies as white, 7% as Asian American, and 7% is African American. That's not really a diverse racially. There's a difference among the age and the income structure as well. Now, how to make it more diverse? Well, that probably comes down to housing and schools. Make sure our schools are as high performing as we can afford, and that will attract people who want to move to Concord. That's one reason why I moved to Concord, was because of the school system. I think those are probably the two areas that I would focus my efforts on, trying to increase the amount of affordable housing, because that is something that is not market driven. That is something that we as the local town government have to create opportunities for, and then also to support our schools. Thank you.
Thank you. And Dean.
Attracting a younger population is critical to the community at this point. I also looked at some census data and find that the state of Massachusetts community's average age is about 39. The average age in Concord is 45. Now, some of that has to do with the fact that Concord is a relatively more wealthy community than others, and people are farther along in their careers, and et cetera. So we are a little bit of an older community. But to bring in additional younger people, you need housing that they can afford. And so I want to just make a slight clarification between the previous comments I was making. Do we have a diverse housing stock? The answer is yes, we do. Do we have an affordable housing stock? The answer is no, we don't. So that is the thing that is the primary barrier to people who are early in their, let's just say, their housing ladder, as they're moving up their ladder of maybe they're renting their first apartment and then they're moving forward, et cetera. Concord is not accessible on that housing ladder for younger families or for younger people. So we need more rental units. We've tried to do some stuff with the planning board, and its accessory apartment move and its two-family move. So we are doing things to diversify the housing stock in a way that makes these kinds of things more affordable. And I'm very much in favor of continuing those efforts. There are also proposals in the open space and rec plan to move development rights from open space to more downtown areas, and that would create a conservation restriction on those open areas by moving development rights. It's a very dynamic idea, but it really is something we might want to study.
Thank you. Henry?
Well, I think I take that a question to mean diversity in a number of respects. And of which only one is the mix of residents in terms of available housing. In order to buy a $500,000 house in this town, which is probably about as cheap as they get, you need an income of about $100,000 a year, and you need to come up with $80,000 as a down payment. A lot of young people just can't handle that. So I think part of the answer is we do need affordable family housing. And how we get that, I think there are many options. And I think the town can be somewhat more imaginative with regard to that, in terms of using town-owned property, in terms of negotiating with builders and developers and so on. But diversity also means employment. by the town. It means because our town staff and our various departmental employees are not nearly as diverse as they might be. And, I have for many years been a member of the New Hampshire Bar Gender Equality Committee. There's just there's an awful lot of wasted talent that goes unused because the employment opportunities for minorities and for women are not really what they should be. And my suggestion is that we also raise awareness on this, and that we perhaps hire a consultant to deal with the personnel board and the town manager to find ways to employ a more diverse town staff.
Okay, thank you. The next question sounds related, but I think it's a different angle in a different direction. What are your thoughts about promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in Concord? The order is Dean, Linda, Henry, and Carlyn.
Well, as a school committee observer for the finance committee 2 years ago, I really was very impressed with the way the schools are engaging with the question of diversity and inclusion. They have a wide array of programs that they're engaging with to do cultural competency. We have an enormous number of families in town who are now English as a second language, have different traditions from the Judeo-Christian tradition. And so the school systems have really taken the lead here in, systematizing programs because they're the touch points within the community. The teachers are engaging with children and families from a variety of traditions, different language skills every day. As a town, we don't have quite the same level of touch with people, but we still need to have the same sort of sense of, well, what kind of a calendar are we running, or what sort of commitment are we making to diversity? So I think we can take cues from some of the good work that's being done in the schools through the programs that they've already instituted, because it bubbles out from there. We're touching the children, we're working with the families, and we can, as a community, work on similar programs within the town. So thanks.
Thank you. Linda?
So I couldn't agree more. I think that the schools and many of our nonprofit organizations have really set the standard for intentionality on addressing this issue, not only in terms of their goals and also their programming, but also actually setting metrics for how they're the progress that they're making. And so the town has talked about hiring a consultant to involve themselves in a discussion amongst its own employees about sensitivity to these issues, as well as talking about strategies for improvement going forward. Some of our surrounding towns have been engaged in multiple year discussions about issues of diversity and inclusion. And some have actually, again, zeroed in on their personnel recruitment strategies. So I think in addition to the consciousness raising that we've all been involved in, and then the excellent programming opportunities that we're seeing unfold even locally, I think we need to not only allow for more community and employee discussion, but we need to not wait for 2 or 3 years of a consultant before we take similarly to what the schools have done in terms of the progress the goals they've set for outreach and recruitment. And they're now, I think, into the 5th year of that and have measurable results to show for it.
Thank you. Henry?
I think the stock answer on this is usually that the problem is the cost of housing, which limits the opportunities for people to live here. But there are other towns in this area which are equally affluent as Concord or very close to it, who, for one reason or another, have a much more diverse population and a much more diverse commercial effort. And so I think I think some thought needs to go into what it is that seems to be the barrier to having a more diverse population that goes beyond just the cost of housing. There are a lot of very expensive houses in neighboring towns that are owned and populated by people of various ethnic and racial backgrounds that you don't find in Concord. So, I think we have to look at this as a much broader problem and see how we can address that. I think probably a vigorous commercial environment is probably a good place to start, because it attracts people to the community, especially if that business environment is one that is flexible and creative enough to cater to the needs of people from different cultures.
Are you all set with your answer?
Yes, I can say the same thing over again if you want.
Okay, no. I was going to give you a chance to turn off
Wait,
your
what's that?
phone.
No, okay. Was it
Yeah.
my phone?
Oh, it might have been, but
No. My phone.
Carlyn? Okay, Carlyn.
I'm going to build on what Henry was talking about, because I think he's on the right track. We need festivals. We need culture-based. Oh no, we are so ready for it once we get through the COVID pandemic. Once we get the vaccines rolled out. Once we start opening up our community, we could have street festivals like we do with the Ag Committee. I miss the Ag Day. That was a lot of fun. But we needed to respect the various components of our town, the historical components. That's what will draw people into Concord, not just to visit, but say, it might be kind of fun to live here. This looks like a welcoming, interesting place to be. And who knows, we might get some more restaurants, some more different shops. It may revitalize the commercial community. So I'm all for festivals. Thanks.
Not to forget the Jazz Festival as well.
Yeah, so it said in the instructions here that could be my discretion on whether to have a rebuttal. So I'm going to give you all a rebuttal that's kind of for the previous 3 questions, and I'll give you 30 seconds each, and we'll just go in the same order we just did. And it's, is the select board doing, or should the select board be doing efforts to increase commercial development in town that would probably serve all your issues around tax burden, housing, and drawing more people in? So we'll start with Dean on that. Consider this a rebuttal of everything that went before for 30 seconds.
Can I just get the question again? I'm sorry for the.
Yeah, so just to diversify the town and help with the tax burden, is the select board working on increasing commercial development in town, or should it be?
Well, the answer that I have for that is yes. We gave up some commercial property on Forest Ridge so that we could build, housing for people 55 and up that, it wouldn't burden our school system, but we have now developed a 24/7 ambulance service on the west side of town because we have more people over there. So, we have given up commercial land, and, 2229 Main Street might be an opportunity for some commercial development. Anything where we can put office, light industrial, et cetera. Okay, stop.
Thank you. Linda?
So the state's recent economic development bill that was passed in 2020 includes some options for, or some expectation that all MBTA communities will have the opportunity to designate an area close for smart growth and 40R overlay. I think we are already looking at that in the Crosby area, and that and future NMI potential commercial development out there could address this issue.
Thank you. Henry?
I think absolutely we need to support our business community, and we found that out no better way than during the COVID environment, where because there were so many things that the town either would not or could not do to support local business, that local organizations like Concord Together and the community chest stepped up with raising money and supporting businesses that were about to disappear. And it's going to take us a long time to rebuild our business community. And it's going to take a lot of effort on the part of everyone.
Thank you. And finally, Carlyn.
And like everything else, we've been taking the business community for granted. We just expected the shops are going to be there, but guess what? I can't buy my favorite soap anymore because the store left. It is frustrating. Yes, we do need to help the business community. There are several proposals. There's going to be one that's going to be discussed at the Economic Vitality Committee meeting that's coming up on Tuesday, an interesting one. And I encourage folks to tune into that particular committee. It's at 4:00. Thanks.
Thank you. And so the next question, what have we learned from the pandemic that should change how town government operates going forward? And the order is Carlyn, Henry, Linda, and Dean.
Okay, I'll start off. The Board of Health has been an absolute dream. It's been one of those underappreciated gems that we've discovered because of the pandemic. Not just the Board of Health, but also the health department for the town and their relationship on how they've been able to try to roll out the vaccination plans for the town of Concord. Given the restrictions they've had, it hasn't gone as smoothly as possible to get the COVID vaccine, but I think they've done a marvelous job, and I have a new healthy respect for them. I think we should all understand that it has been a difficult time. This issue about the pandemic and how the town has responded to it, that's actually one of the questions that the Concord Journal has asked too. So I'd encourage everyone to look at the Concord Journal online or in print for the responses from all the candidates, because my response is the same. We haven't appreciated them as much, and the town's done so far a fairly good job. I think that's it.
Thank you. Henry?
Well, I just talked about the relationship between the town and the civic organizations, which I think has just elevated the importance of communication between the town government and the civic organizations in this town, which have been a really important part of our culture. And I think they have been underappreciated, and they have not been consulted or involved in decision making. As I mentioned, the Chamber of Commerce and Concord Together and the Business Partnership and the Economic Vitality were essential in helping us get through the COVID situation. And there are other private organizations like the Open Table and St. Vincent de Paul and numerous other organizations that have really filled the gap. We've learned from the COVID environment and the concentration on virtual meetings, the importance of improving our cell phone service in town, which is a disgrace, and the improvement of the internet and communication, so that because when we get out of this, we're probably going to continue to use the electronic communication in one format or another, even if we have live meetings. I've been to meetings again at the Bar Association in Concord, New Hampshire, where they hold live meetings and have a large TV screen at the head of the room so that people can call in and participate in live meetings remotely. And that might be a good model for us to consider even when we go back to live meetings. So we're learning new methods of communication. We're enabling more people to participate. And we need to make the things we've learned liberating and constructive, and something that we can benefit from in the future. There's even talk now about having, virtual town meetings. I mean, that's something that never would have been mentioned. Before.
Thank you, Henry. Next is Linda.
Well, I think one thing that I've learned from this is that the people are incredibly resilient, and we are in fact indebted to our public health and safety people through all of this. I already had a high appreciation for the role that our talented employees play, but I have an even more esteemed value for what they've done in terms of responding, adapting, and bringing others along with them as fast as they could in terms of the communication chain. I will say that myself and the town manager recently had a conversation with our legislative reps, bringing to their attention the increased participation that Zoom has allowed, despite all our challenges with Zoom, but in terms of increased citizen participation in many of our meetings, and spoke with them about the constraints without some further legislative action on that. I do think that the hybrid method that Henry was referencing is one of the things that we in fact discussed with them. So we'll see where that goes. I would say that we've also learned, I think, that or maybe we're underestimating what it's going to take as we move forward on reentry. Because I think there will be, again, some difficulties we have to go through as we get back to more normal operations, whatever form that takes. I do want to say that I'm pleased that the town did have an economic vitality committee already in place, working with the business community. It was well-timed and poised for what was brought before us. And almost all of the suggestions that were brought to the select board by both the Economic Vitality Committee and the town manager were acted on affirmatively by the select board. And we will continue to listen to their suggestions for strengthening the business community.
Thank you. Dean?
I feel one thing that the pandemic has taught us in a very painful way is the direct through line from tourism or out-of-town visitors through our business centers. And that means that we have focused on, appropriately, the vitality of our commercial districts. But we need to take a step back from that and really incorporate that directly into the town budget. It has been a bit of a hop and a skip from being out of the rec department budget, sitting in the visitor center, being a part-time job. It needs to be really a component of our town government. So that's one piece of the puzzle. The other thing I think that's been a lesson from our pandemic experience is just the popularity of mail-in voting. The town clerk, Kari Tari, gets props from me for stepping up and really finding a way to let us participate in our democracy successfully. And I think we can continue to have mail-in voting at a high level. So I think that's a good thing. I do think that we're going to need to take a very serious look at all of our buildings so that they are safe environments. We have heard at various committee meetings that energy consumption is way up because we're running our air circulation systems at a much higher level. We are constantly trying to move the air around so that we can be safe. So should we be taking a look at capital planning in a very broad way to see that our work environments have healthy air and can be properly operated in an environment like this in the future if necessary. So I'll stop there.
Thank you. Next question. What do you see as the biggest obstacle to fulfilling the goals of the Concord Climate Plan, and what can the select board do about it? And the order is Henry, Dean, Carlyn, and Linda.
Thank you. The obstacles are cost, the low cost of fossil fuel and the high cost of conversion, inertia, rapidly changing technology, which discourages capital investment, and a sense that the long-term solution is global and there is not a lot that we can do locally that's going to have any significant effect. Now, notwithstanding, those are the obstacles. Those are not excuses. But they are obstacles that we need to consider as being very real impediments to making any local progress. Notwithstanding that, The library in its new building has adopted a very aggressive and very public and very practical environmental green plan for its new construction. And I'm happy to see, with regard to the Concord Middle School, it's been a priority in the planning for that building. I think that we should consider immediately initiatives that would have a practical and positive economic effect, including having a much larger number of charging stations in the business areas to encourage people to come downtown to charge their cars and shop. I would even suggest that we look into having charging stations in business areas be free, so that, again, it would encourage people to have electric vehicles and to go downtown to shop in order to get charged up. The Climate Action and Resiliency Plan is a very comprehensive plan, and I think it's very promising. But there is one thing that is not mentioned in it,
Okay.
and that is cost.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry to cut you off.
that-
The next speaker is Dean.
So I think Henry's got it right on the head there. The primary obstacle here is money. So this is a balancing act that we have to do within our budgets and within our means. A simple example of that is the case of the school system, which replaces approximately 2 buses a year. About 12% of our carbon footprint is in transportation, and it's the 12% is in diesel consumption. And the primary vehicles of that are our buses. So if we could replace 2 vehicles a year and we had the money to do it, we would buy electric buses. They're available, they exist. We are running electric buses now, but we cannot afford them and keep our budgets in line. So the main problem is money in the end. So we need this balancing act of how much debt can we afford versus how much climate resilience and climate response can we engage with. I do think that each capital project of any size, whether you're replacing a fire truck, whether you're replacing a building, whether you're renovating the townhouse, needs to be scored and shown how much of a climate impact it can have in the process. If we're buying a new fire truck, what kind of gas mileage is the new one going to get? And is that an improvement on the old one, even if you're still buying a diesel fire truck? If you're renovating a building like the townhouse is right now, when you come out the other side of that, are you going to have a full air source heat pump system and electrified heating? So there are different ways, and sometimes these costs, when you're doing it at the front end, are not that dramatic. The middle school right now, the climate resiliency component of that, the sustainable pieces that get us to net zero ready, this is not net zero, are only 1% of the cost of doing that building. They add 1% at the front end. So that's a really good thing. Was that 15 seconds, Robert? I think I'm about out. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Carlyn?
While we talk about how to implement the 4 sustainability principles under the climate plan, we have to also remember that this is based on electrifying the town, making it as much fueled by clean energy like electricity rather than fossil fuels. And yet that depends on having an electric grid run by our town municipal plant, being able to sustain the load and to keep the load balanced so we don't have brownouts and blackouts. So I would say the one obstacle that I would work on as a select board member, and the select board does not have direct control, of course, over the light plant, that's the town manager's domain, but it would be to influence as much as possible the greening of our electric grid and maintaining the load balance as new sources of electricity from the photovoltaic cells from homes as well as from businesses come online, because keeping the load balance is just as important as a way of keeping the lights on. Thank you.
Okay. So next is Linda.
So my fellow candidates have already pointed out the cost challenges with implementing the progress on the climate change plan. But I think there are some additional challenges as well. And that is what Concord has done a wonderful job of setting aspirational goals and concrete goals of how to reach those aspirational goals. In many cases, we are hampered by existing state statute, whether it be for building codes, for not being able to deny gas infrastructure, further gas infrastructure, et cetera. And so, a great deal of work still needs to happen at a level that's out of our control. And certainly we have a number of citizens, and the select board has also weighed in with various letters of support to the legislature as to make progress in some of these issues. I would also say that the Climate Action Board and CSAC have pointed out from time to time that a great deal of responsibility lies on our individual citizens to adapt their own strategies and adopt action plans to convert to things like geothermal and air source heat pumps, et cetera. It can't all be done by the town, clearly. A lot of it and whether it's making your own personal decision about the type of vehicle you purchase or not. The select board did approve on the new fleet electrification plan, and that, along with incentives, I think will help us make some progress towards the goals that are in the climate action plan. I will point out that while we're concerned about the tax burden on our citizens, I need to stop. I would just comment that some of the shift of costs will go to ratepayers for their electricity.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Do you have ideas for strategies which can help reduce litigation resulting from contested issues? And if so, what are they? And the order is Linda, Carlyn, Dean, and Henry.
Okay. Well, unfortunately, I'm going to comment that I think we're going to actually see an increase in issues that are going to be litigated before the town. And the reason I say that is that as land and other natural resources and water, et cetera, are limited, obviously. And as towns bump up against their levy limits and the need to increase commercial activity to gain additional revenue and or residential additional residences in town for increased revenue, there are going to be challenges to protecting these resources. But having said that, I will say that when we are aware of conflicts, that the more people we can have at the table upfront to discuss these issues and to seek informal ways of working out compromises and or getting some clarity on how to proceed that somehow meets the needs of opposing parties or communities, adjacent communities, that's better than ending up in litigation and then dealing with it at that level. But it can't always be avoided.
Okay, thank you. Next is Carlyn.
Thank you. I've been licensed as an attorney for the last 38 years. And my experience has been you can't stop people from filing a suit. You can't stop people from litigating. But when you have to defend a suit, you have to defend it as best you can because you're trying to protect the interest of your client, whether that client is the town or the plaintiff itself. I was doing some research on the town's lawsuits, and I discovered that since 2015, over 28 lawsuits were filed in trial court, either the land court, the Superior Court, or the Concord District Court. Of those 28 lawsuits, 16 are still open. So I'm going to suggest that whether I'm on the board or not after this election, that the select board every quarter sit down with general counsel in open session or executive session and ask for a status report on the litigation that has been filed, plus any pending possible litigation that may be coming down the pike. I think that will help keep people more aware of what's going on and will keep the select board in particular advised as to how the tax dollars are being spent, and what's the philosophy behind the litigation? Thank you.
Thank you. Dean?
I'll start by answering the question broadly, and that is, at what point does the town end up being sued? Why would we be sued? Some of that is just distrust. Some of that is that the town is not perceived to be acting in a straightforward manner, and someone feels aggrieved by that. So I think the best thing we can do to try to minimize or mitigate some of the litigation that Carlyn says that we end up in is to try to just to be responsible and transparent about our activities. Not spend a lot of time keeping people from getting freedom of information requests satisfied or whatever they might feel, so anything we can do to open ourselves and make things as transparent as possible will hopefully mitigate the beginning of a litigation. If you're in a litigation, and we are in a very serious one right now, the best thing we can do is try to find a solution that is outside of getting a judge to solve it. Any way we can do that, reduces the length of time for appeals or any other kind of actions that tend to make the things drag on, that Carlyn is saying that these things are continue even though we don't know what they all are. So the goal is transparency and straightforwardness in government, rebuilding trust or increasing trust in the government, and operating in a way that allows us to solve problems before they end up having to be solved by a judge, which can go on for years.
Thank you. Henry?
I agree with Dean about 100%, but I would take it a couple of steps further. I believe that there are very few disputes that cannot be settled in a civilized way if people are acting in good faith and they have some creativity about an understanding of what the needs of all the parties are. A year ago, I suggested to the town manager and to the chair of the to the select board that that before they take that large lawsuit about the Esarek Woods any further, they hire as a consultant a distinguished independent attorney to review the case and to advise them on the merits of the case and on possible avenues for settlement. I also suggested that the settlement that had been reached with Harvard University over the Estabrook Woods was extremely creative and very effective, and could have been the basis for a settlement of that lawsuit. But I think that the problem really goes to the fact that we've done a poor job of evaluating and supervising the legal services that have been provided to us. And my suggestion is, since we have a large number of extremely talented attorneys as residents of this town, that we consider forming a legal services committee with some of the best lawyers who live in this town, who would review things like the selection of town council and review pending litigation, and so that we would have some informed and impartial input into this process that has become enormously expensive for us, and of course, even more expensive for many of the residents of this town. And this lawsuit, by the way, is going to be a lot more expensive before we're done with it. I promise you that.
Thank you. This is the last league question. It has been said that Concord has what is called a strong town manager. What, in your opinion, should be the relationship between the town manager and the select board when it comes to policy decision making? And the order is Dean, Linda, Henry, and Carlyn.
The relationship between the town manager and the select board is of an employer-employee thing, that the town manager is executing on the policy that is set by the select board. So I feel as though that needs to be a very trusted relationship. It needs to be a person with whom you can have a frank and open discussion about how, the direction in which things can go. But in the end, the select board sets policy. They direct the town manager to execute on that policy. The town manager has a lot of input. The town manager is the one who can make suggestions, can advise on the practical nature of things, but in the end, it's the select board who has to make those decisions.
Thank you. Linda?
It's true, the role of the select board is to set policy and to evaluate the town manager, hire and evaluate the town manager. I think Concord has a strong tradition of a strong town manager form of government, but that has been built on a relationship of a collaborative relationship, working back and forth together. During my 3 years on the board, we did hire, as you well know, a new town manager after a 26-year incumbent. And like every major transition like that there is an inevitable period of each side getting to know each other and work with each other. And I think we've been involved in that process, albeit upended by the pandemic that came along shortly after the hire of the new town manager. I think that the select board was clear about that this is, the expectation is for collaborative process, that there is, and that the town manager also needs to continue to work to increase his working knowledge of the town. And it's a growing relationship.
Thank you. Henry?
Well, I think what I have to say is kind of just a kind of a variation on the comments that have been made. The model is that with any corporate entity, the board of directors, which is what the select board is, their most important responsibility is the hiring and supervision of their chief executive officer. And that's what the town manager is. And whatever the shortcomings of the town manager might be, they are at the end of the day, that is really the responsibility of the select board. And so that relationship should be governed by them. I think that, I think that a better job could be done there. You rely on the town manager to administer the policies of the select board, and then but the elected officers, the elected executive body that hired and supervised the town manager, is ultimately responsible for his actions. And that's all. That's really all I have to say on that subject.
Okay, thank you. So those are all the lead questions. And so now it's time for
Would
questions.
you like me to answer the question?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I jumped the gun.
It's hard to keep track when you keep rotating around. I understand. It's not like a routine system. I'll be
Yeah.
very brief. I'll be very brief.
Please take
On
your
this
whole
one,
2 minutes.
It's okay. I haven't done that yet, nor do I tend to continue that pattern. We have a strong town manager form of government. Take a look at how Carlisle runs. They have a town administrator form of government. If you watch the videos of what's happening with Carlisle versus Concord, you see a definite different flow of how the people interact with each other and what they rely on the chief administrator, town administrator or town manager do. We have our current select board is not as strong as it could be in monitoring its primary and sole employee, the town manager. And I would encourage a little more strength in that relationship, not just in saying you have to do this, but getting the feedback, getting the collaboration going between what the town manager's office is doing and what the select board knows about. Timing is always important. Getting the information from the town manager's office to the select board in time so they can review the documents, make an informed decision at their Monday meetings, that's also really important. So I would like to see that relationship, that collaborative approach strengthened, not just for a strong town manager, but also a strong select board, because we're the voice of the people. You elect us for a reason, and this is it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, I think we got everybody there, right? So next, we're going to have chat generated questions, and the audience has been putting lots of comments into the chat. And so we're going to continue this rotation. I'm apologize for the rotation being kind of awkward here. So Court, do you have any questions for the candidates? And then I'll say the order once you say the question.
Yeah, certainly. Cynthia and I have received a number of questions. You see most of them on the chat. Some of them have gone directly to the league's email. We will not necessarily read them verbatim. Some of them we've tried to cluster together with common themes. The first question, however, we will share with our candidates word for word. It reads, "What is your vision of a more perfect Concord?"
Okay, so the order for that is going to be Carlyn, Henry, Linda, and Dean, and you have 1 minute.
Build the middle school, build the middle school, build the middle school. I'm a big supporter of the middle school study that's going on now. We have an opportunity to do a really good job, and that is the core piece of our educational system. That is also what will draw people to Concord, and that is what will make Concord a more perfect place to live. Thank you.
Okay, Henry.
My vision of a more perfect Concord is a vibrant community with engaged citizens and an active business and cultural community where there's energy in the town, and there is a sense of belonging of everybody who lives here, and a participation in its government, and feeling that they are loved and welcomed and have some influence over their lives, which are qualities that are really hard to find in the world these days.
Thank you. Linda.
After that, I don't think we need anything else. Well, let me say that, the challenge always is to balance the wants and needs of all of our citizens. And I guess my main concern is, in the more perfect Concord, would be outreaching to all those voices that we don't hear. We have a wonderful core of very talented volunteers on all our committees, hundreds of people, but some of the same people who are helping us through challenge after challenge after challenge with their input. We need to do a better job of reaching out to all those citizens that we rarely hear from.
Okay, thank you. Dean.
My vision for a more perfect Concord is a Concord in which the generations are bound together, where older people are able to age in place, where children are able to play freely in the street if they feel so inclined, to go to meet your neighbors in the commercial district, to really feel connected through the organizations and other entities in which we interact. A more perfect Concord will also include the kind of thing that I really love, and that's organizations like the Open Table, which try to reach out and help people who are sort of hidden from us. That we don't see them, we don't notice them, but there is need in Concord, and I'm sort of hopeful that that need can be reduced through the kinds of efforts that are being made all the time.
Okay, thank you. Next question from the chat, please.
Yes, please. We have two questioners who have referred to Estabrook Woods. So we invite the candidates to speak further on Estabrook Woods litigation, and then more specifically on matters of public access to Estabrook Woods.
And so I take it that's really the same, because litigation regards public access?
That's correct.
Okay, so the order for that one is going to be Henry, Dean, Carlyn, and Linda.
Well, I've already addressed that question, I think. I think that the issue here is that there was public access to the Estabrook Woods before the litigation was commenced. And it was the progress of this litigation that has greatly impeded that access, and is also really, and I think by the time we get through with this case, we will be in no better position than we were before the suit was brought. That's all I can say on that subject. And everybody will have spent a great deal of money, and I don't know whether anything will have been improved by that process.
Okay, thank you. Next is, let's see, is Carlyn.
I think it was Dean, but maybe not.
It was Dean. It was
It's Dean.
4, 3, 2,
Go
1.
Dean, go Dean.
I'm sorry.
that's
I was
fine.
all set to jump in. I'm
No,
sorry.
well, it was, let's see, whatever, that's fine. You're right, it was you. I apologize. This rotation is really throwing me off.
That's okay. All right. So just start the clock. Just to caveat this answer, I'm not on the board, so I don't have access to the whatever priority information that has been held in executive session, which might change if I get onto the board. However, the main problem we have here is that the little narrow ribbon of road that we are currently trying to gain a right to goes through private land on all sides of it. It is a very narrow benefit if we actually were to win the case. We would be able to walk a road that takes us to Carlisle as a public way, and everything on either side of that is still private land. So the landowners may, at their discretion, close off trails, tell us that we can't go there, etc. So my goal would be to say that the Estabrook Road entrance is no dogs allowed in that entrance. You can park here, but you have to go on foot, and there are no dogs through that area, that entrance.
Okay, thank you. So now Carlyn, right?
Thank you. In researching for this presentation today, I did look at the docket sheet for the Estabrook litigation that's on the web for the Mass Trial Courts, and it shows that the case is scheduled to go to trial on June 1, 2, 3, June 8, 9, 10, 6 days of trial. That means there's still time for the town and the abutters to negotiate a settlement. Because as Henry had said before, I think settlement is the best option. When you have a judge making a decision, there could be an appeal. That will take time. It will not resolve the emotional underlying issues that surround the legal issues. So I would encourage all parties to continue negotiating a settlement. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you. Linda, you're next, right?
Yes, I am. So, as a current select board member and with this issue under current litigation, I do feel somewhat constrained in responding to the question. But having said that, Carlyn has already pointed out that we're walking up to a trial date in early June. And, it's my hope that we could resolve this for the sake of all parties involved. And there is always opportunity for settlement.
Thank you. Next question.
Hi, thank you. Would you speak to what you see as Concord's role and responsibility for meeting the challenges of climate change?
Okay, so this is the order, and you can kick me if I get it wrong during it. Linda, Carlyn, Dean, and Henry.
Okay. Well, I previously talked about the role that must be taken by all of our citizens and our businesses, quite frankly, as well, in terms of mitigating the effects of climate change wherever they can, and whether that means, and that's going to be difficult, particularly given the rough time that's going to be particularly difficult for businesses in the commercial sector, given what we've just been through with the pandemic and the stresses that they've been under. And it's going to take citizens making their own independent decisions, taking advantages of incentives, whether they be federal, state, or local, to affect change in terms of either their heating systems, choice of car, or solar adaptation.
Okay, thank you. Carlyn?
We have oftentimes thought of ourselves as being leaders in various aspects of town governance, but I truly think that Concord is a role model, one of the leaders in encouraging sustainability within all aspects of town governance. I know I personally plan on getting an electric stove once my gas stove conks out, but it's the kind of personal commitment that the individuals of town have to do this that will help us be, not just play a role, but be a role model for other towns in Massachusetts. Thank you.
Thank you. Dean?
Concord's the key to this, I believe, is unlocking the municipal light plant. The municipal light plant has a very large cash reserve, and I feel as though the town can encourage them to try to put that to work to help us meet some of our sustainability objectives. We can put a solar array on top of the new middle school, which will be ready for it, and they will generate electricity revenue as a result of that. But they need to put some capital of theirs to work in order to do these things. We could put an array on the high school parking lot, and they could put that capital to work generating electricity and therefore revenue for themselves. So I think that the light plant is a centerpiece of how we solve some of these problems. I think I've got 15 seconds. I'll leave it at that for now.
Thank you. And Henry?
Yeah, I think we reviewed this and made reference to the climate action plan and the actions that have been taken by various projects that are ongoing right now. So I think that the town is doing the best they can on this project, and a lot of effort has been put into it. And I think we will make some progress on it if we implement those plans. To the extent that individuals have to take actions in response to it, a lot of it is really going to depend on the sense of urgency they feel and their willingness to spend their money to respond to that sense of urgency, whether it means replacing heating systems or installing, solar panels or buying a new car or whatever it is. They're going to have to feel that this is something that's worthwhile for them and that's important. And we can perhaps persuade them to do that, especially provide the incentives.
Thank you. Next question.
Yes, what is your opinion of the middle school building project? Thank you.
Okay, the order is Dean, Linda, Henry, and Carlyn.
I've been an observer of the middle school building committee for the last 6 months, I believe, and it is going to be a wonderful building for the town of Concord. Having said that, it is going to meet all of our educational priorities, and it may meet some community priorities as well. However, given that it will be a huge capital investment by the town, we are not taking MSBA money. We are going forward without any of the MSBA's help. And we are at exactly 100% of the $80 to $100 million that were promoted at town meeting when the feasibility plans were approved. So we have zero wiggle room at this point in the budget to build the building that we dream of.
Thank you. Linda?
Yeah, I've also been this liaison to the school committee this year for the select board. And recently, of course, been following the middle school building project closely, including the recent forum. Clearly, a great deal of progress has been made on the feasibility study and soon to move into the design and moving into the design phase. The budget is extremely tight, as Dean points out. I think we need a new middle school. There's no question about that. I think we're thoughtfully trying to prepare with the stabilization fund that was set up last year to be able to at least mitigate the peak of the debt service that the town citizens will face. So they will be net zero ready. And clearly there will be projects that need to follow after the construction of the building. We need to move forward with this.
Thank you. Henry?
I think it's a great project. It's going to serve a lot of needs for the community. What we have to do is we really have to work very hard to control the cost, and we have to work very hard to find out how we're going to manage that cost. And that goes back to the impact on the tax rates. And I think one of the ways that we can deal with that is through the residential exemption, which takes some of that load off. We also have to look at the opportunities from what that will arise from our having 18 acres where the current Peabody School is, and what we do with that, whether or not we want to use that for some municipal purpose, whether we can sell that land for development and use perhaps the, $5 or $10 million that will be raised by that, or whether we want to use it for affordable housing or whatever. That's an opportunity that will maybe have some mitigating effect on the cost of the school, which is an important consideration.
Thank you. Carlyn?
Watching the middle school building committee and its various subcommittees is fascinating. It's like building a Star Wars Lego construction block by block by block. And that's exactly how it's being done, in a very thoughtful, deliberative manner. I'm very proud of how this committee is working in subcommittees. The sustainability, the design, there was a finance committee and the communications committee. The communications committee is now gearing up to provide the information on how the project is going. I encourage everyone to support the middle school project when it comes up for the special town meeting, probably December, January of next year, and as well as to the special town election to confirm that vote. Thank you.
Thank you. And do we have any more questions from the chat?
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Moderator, with your permission, we're going to touch on 5 questions, all of which relate to our housing stock and affordable housing.
Okay, the time is 3:35. So I think, I'm not sure we'll have time for 5, but let's
Right.
see how we go. Put them in the order of importance that you want them.
Well, I'm prepared to cluster them if I have your permission.
At your, you put it,
We have a reference to 118 tear downs of larger houses last year. And the questioner wants to know candidate position on that, perspective on that. Secondly, should there be a small tax on house sales that applies to affordable housing goals? Third, where do town and school employees fit in on prioritization for affordable? Fourth, where does zoning fit in so that we can, quote, more easily build mixed income, unquote? And finally, every time we do natural preservation, we enhance the livability of our town, but we take land out of development that could be used for affordable housing. How do we balance these needs in a purposeful way?
so I'm hearing two main themes. So if you, with your permission, the first one sounds like, could financial incentives be used related to the tear down of smaller houses to build bigger ones, or the initial building of really big houses? Is that a reasonable question?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Good.
so do you want me to re-ask that question, or you guys get what I was saying? So does select board candidates support using financial incentives to impact the rate of tearing down modest houses to build bigger ones, or of just building really big houses from scratch? So the order of that is going to be Carlyn, Henry, Linda, and Dean.
Okay, when I bought my house, it should have been torn down. It was in really, really bad condition. No, I'm serious. And I don't know how many of the other situations were facing this way. We basically rebuilt half of it over a course of 7 years. I really would have resented someone telling me I could not have torn down that house and rebuilt something, given the termite infestation, the leaking pipes. There are many situations when a tear down is completely appropriate. To say it's not appropriate under all circumstances, I think, is unwise. But I understand the underlying concern for the increasing mansionization within our town. So again, it's a balance of what can be done and what should be done. We have a really good planning committee. The planning board does a very good job. And I think we should support their efforts in addressing this situation.
Okay, and Henry?
Well, The tear down phenomenon, which is unfortunate because it deprives the town of many of the more affordable housing that's available already, is just entirely or almost entirely a matter of economics, and that is that the available land on which to build new homes is so limited that developers and contractors have had to resort to finding property that already had an inexpensive home on it and use that as a way of building a larger and more expensive home. And if you're going to limit that, what you're also doing is depriving, in many cases, somebody who's lived in a home for a long time, essentially of their lifetime savings, by reducing the value of their property as a capital asset for them, for their retirement or for their being it's a tough problem. And
Yep. Okay, thank you. Linda?
I believe I heard our Director of Planning and Land Management comment the other day that of the 116 last sales, 100 were torn down. Incentivizing is a real challenge, which is one of the reasons that we have the town approved, and it's currently before the legislature for a home rule petition for a transfer tax surcharge on sales, home sales that would be devoted to affordable housing. To generate a revenue stream that would be on hand for affordable housing so that someone who needs that income for their retirement could be offered that income. The affordable housing funds could buy down the cost of that home and make it affordable to someone else with a deed restriction.
Okay, and Dean?
I do believe the town's been engaging with this problem for a while, and it doesn't sound like we've been making a tremendous amount of progress. The floor area ratio bylaw that was passed should mitigate some of this and keep neighborhoods from being tremendously overbuilt. However, it still doesn't stop a house from being torn down and replaced with a modern house. A 50-year-old home built to 50-year-old standards is very hard to make into a home that meets the needs that a new home buyer is looking for. So we're talking about completely different problems here. One is affordable housing, which that house may not even be affordable before it was torn down, and modest size housing. So I'm going to just leave it at that. And I feel that the planning board has already made a good effort with the floor area ratio to try to keep neighborhoods at least at a certain scale.
Okay, so I think we have time for one more chat question before we get to the closing statements. And this other theme I heard was around affordable housing, and we've talked a lot about it. So do you have any totally different subject matter out of the chat than what we've talked about so far?
Sure. Will you support pilot payment in lieu of taxes agreements with the 6 largest non-municipal tax exempt landowners in Concord?
Okay, I don't understand what you just said, so I'll just put that before your team of candidates here. And
could you repeat it?
Sure. Hold on. Will you support pilot payment in lieu of tax?
Oh, pilot. Okay, yeah.
Okay, agreements with the 6 largest non-municipal tax exempt landowners in Concord?
So that would be like churches and nonprofits and what have you. Is that what that is?
Schools,
Hospitals.
hospitals.
Okay. All right. So the order of that will be Henry, Dean, Carlyn, and Linda. And this will be the last chat question.
Well, yeah, I think that in general, pilot payments, if they're voluntary, represent an acknowledgement of the services that the town may provide. But I think the more important issue is, why are these institutions exempt from taxation? The reason is that we want to encourage and support the activities that they are pursuing. And we want to attract institutions like that, at least in reasonable numbers and in reasonable proportions in our town. We want private schools, we want churches, we want hospitals. We want those things to be here, and we don't want to discourage them by asking them to pay the town for their existence when, in many cases, we ought to be saying, well, we'd pay you to be here. And, in many cases, they provide services rather than using services. So I'm not a big fan of pilot payments.
Okay, thank you. Dean?
This is a parallel between the way the select board relates to these entities and the finance committee relates to the town. The finance committee uses its bully pulpit to try to influence town behavior, to encourage the town budgeting process to go a certain way, knowing full well that we have no authority to force it. We would, as a select board, try to encourage private entities to provide us with pilot payments, at least at the level of the services that they are getting: fire, police, protection, et cetera, road plowing. And at some level, they ought to feel as though they're getting something for nothing and ought to step up to the table. But the select board has no right to force them. There's no law, there's no way to get them to be forced to the table. So we just have to try to encourage it.
Thank you. Carlyn?
Ask them to be good neighbors. There is no mandatory way to enforce a certain dollar amount for the payment in lieu of taxes, which is what pilot stands for. But encouraging these nonprofits' participation in the community efforts, I think we have seen quite a bit from the top 6, and I would hope that we could work towards maintaining a good relationship going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And finally, Linda?
Interestingly enough, the Concord Housing Authority does pay pilot to the town. Of course, it's by formula, and there are federal and state funds to provide that. I do think that some of these organizations, the top 6 organizations, are providing valuable service to the community. In many cases, these organizations are making, in lieu of tax, contributions to the town, which either buy equipment for the fire department or are helping with renovation of sidewalks in front of their property, et cetera, and the town benefits. And these would be services that the town would otherwise be paying for. So I think at this point, we're in the mode of trying to encourage and as someone's already pointed out, remind the entities of the level of service that they're currently receiving from the town.
Thank you. So I've really learned a lot about Concord today. Thank you for sharing. And so we have time for closing statements, and each statement, you have up to 1 minute, and the order is Dean, Linda, Henry, and Carlyn.
Okay, well, I want to thank the League for hosting this. This has really been a pleasure. I'm looking for your vote. I really appreciate everyone who's attending today. I think my qualities are, I am open to others' ideas. I am not afraid to open my own mouth, and I am willing to work in a very detailed manner to solve problems. I've always looked for ways in which I can make a positive contribution in the community, and I hope you'll vote for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda?
So I too want to thank the League for hosting this forum today. There are any number of important issues that are before us, both in the near term and the long term. And we need as many voices at the table to address these issues as possible. The middle school is high on the list. We have to make a determination about the next steps for the NMI reuse planning effort. There are challenges that are before us in terms of sustainability issues, budget issues and the tax burden, any number of issues that we've been talking about today. We need all of our citizens engaged, and I have endeavored to bring a variety of voices to the table, both informally and formally, to address some of these issues. And we'll continue to do so. Please vote for my reelection to the Select Board.
Thank you. Henry?
I want to thank everybody who has put up with this conversation this afternoon and has listened to us. I hope what we have said has been of interest and has stimulated some debate about these important issues. Obviously, the reason I'm here is because I think that I can use the experience that I have had in dealing with many different organizations and many different problems, and that my theme of sustainability, open, transparent, and responsive will resonate with the voters. And I would very appreciate your support on March 25th at the polls. Thank you.
Thank you. And Carlyn?
I love having the last word. This is fun. Lynn, thank you very much for doing a marvelous job as moderator. This is not easy, but you and the rest of the league folks have done yourselves proud. I'm very, very pleased to be part of this group, part of this event today. And I just want to let folks know that you have a difficult choice ahead. You have 4 qualified candidates for 2 seats. Now, I've already voted because I voted by mail. So I'm hoping that if you are so inclined that you also take advantage of that opportunity. If you choose to vote in person, well, look for our signs and please vote for me for one of the 2 seats for Select Board for Concord. Thank you very much.
So that means I can't change your mind, Carlyn.
No, sorry, too late.
Okay, so that concludes the debate. And so I'm going to turn it back over to Cindy, your League of Concord Carlisle host.
Thank you. Thank you to all of our candidates, our moderator, our technical assistants, and our audience for participating in this forum. Start my video. Thank you. Start my video.
I just brought you back on and then you took yourself off.
There we go. There we go. Okay. All right. So thank you everyone for joining us today. A primary goal of the League of Women Voters is to make our democracy work. One of the most important ways to do that is to vote. The Concord town election is being held on Thursday, March 25th. You can vote early by mail or you can vote in person at the polls on March 25th. Go to our website, lwvcc.org, to learn more about all of the candidates and for more information on checking your voter registration status and voting in the Concord town election. And if you value the work of the League of Women Voters and are not already a member, please consider joining us. Go to lwvcc.org to join, donate, or volunteer. Thank you all for your support.